Yeah, everyone, I'm Miguel from Worldcoin, and I'm here to talk about World ID, why it's needed, how you can build with it, and how it's really easy to integrate, and you should definitely include it in your projects. So usually I will start this talk talking about like SIM resistance and airdrops and NFT minting and all of those things, but I feel like by now we all know why those are a problem, and also like the world is changing really fast. We have all of these AI stuff coming soon. Like if you look 5 months ago, when we didn't have image generation, we didn't have UTP for all these things, the world has changed massively even then, and things that didn't really seem like an issue then, like being able to tell who was a human and who wasn't outside of crypto, now are becoming a really big issue everywhere. And so this prompts a bunch of questions in general, like for projects, for the world, for everything. How do you know what's real? But also, as we continue to build a system where these things slowly take over, maybe, hopefully not, how do you continue building the system that you want to do? How do you fairly distribute all the value that is generated by these things? And these are the questions. All these questions relate to personhood, the idea of who is a human. And the goal of Worldcoin is to build the largest network of real humans, an identity network, and an economic network by giving away ownership for free to every human. Now, when we started this project, the first question that was really clear was, okay, how do you know what's a real unique person? If you want to give something away from free, people are going to try to game that. And if someone does, they kind of like ruins it for everyone. So how can we ensure that you are a unique human and you haven't claimed whatever it is that we're giving away yet? And what it became clear really quickly is that there were 3 requisites for whatever solution we picked, which were that it was private, that we didn't get a database of everyone in the world's information, that doesn't seem great, that it was inclusive, meaning that everyone in the world would have closer to an equal opportunity to sign up. An example of something that's not inclusive would be maybe, I don't know, like asking for a driver's license for the US, that disqualifies most of the world, and that it was robust, meaning that it would actually hold billions of humans in the system without breaking and making it easier to scale. And we started looking at alternatives, like maybe we can use email or phone. This is not great because, I mean, I already have multiple phones and multiple emails, and that's without trying to game the system, so it's not super robust. Maybe you can use KYC. This is not great for the privacy reasons, because now you have everyone's KYC information, which isn't ideal. Maybe you can use Web of Trust, the idea of humans vouching for other humans. This sort of maybe works, but the issue is you need an initial set of humans that are trusted, and you cannot start from zero, which is what we're trying to do. And then the last option is biometrics, something that every human has, and in a way you can use to tell if they're human. We started looking into things like fingerprint. And the issue with most of these are mostly that like they don't contain enough information. So something like Face ID can unlock your phone. Apple locks it out after like 30 inputs, but according to their numbers, 1 in I think 30 million people could unlock your phone. So works if you're trying to unlock your phone and it locks after 30 embeds. Doesn't work if you try to onboard 8 billion people to a system. So fingerprint doesn't have enough info. Same for face, same for palm. DNA kind of has it, but it's also like really expensive and really slow. And also kind of like people are already complaining about this being creepy. Imagine if we were taking their DNA. And so the thing that was left was irises. And then we started to look at, okay, let's say that we go with irises. How do we do that? Can we just have people take a picture of the iris in their phone? And same issue as before, there is not enough resolution. Even if you get really close, the image does not have enough data, enough pixels on it to actually capture it. You depend on lighting, and also not everyone has like an iPhone with an amazing camera. Some people have worse cameras in their phone or maybe even no camera. We try with off-the-shelf sensors, maybe the ones that they have at some airports where they can just like look at you and scan like that. The main issue there is that other than quality, what those systems are trying to do is check if your biometrics match to what they already have in their list. So it's not saying, is this person in the list? It's like saying, is this person equal to this person? So that is much easier. If you actually want to differentiate between humans, this wasn't enough. And so our solution was, unfortunately, it seems like we have to make custom hardware, and no one wants to make custom hardware because it takes a lot of money, of time, and everything. But we did it, we ran through a bunch of prototypes, and we ended up with this thing, the orb. And the point of the orb is to, first of all, make sure that you're real, make sure that you're not trying to trick it somehow, that you're not showing it a screen with a picture of an eye, or a dog, or, I don't know, taking it to a kindergarten. These are all things that people have tried. Then it will check that you have a unique iris, that you have not already been onboarded to Worldcoin. And we do this using an iris code, which is a measure of the randomness of your iris, which makes it so that we don't need to actually store a picture of your iris or biometrics in general. You're more curious about that, you can come find me later and I will explain how it works. And then it verifies your World ID. And World ID is a name that we came up with for this system that acts as an internet passport. It's an identity protocol, and like any passport, it has a bunch of stamps. So for example, when you get verified with the orb, you get the orb stamp, meaning that this person has been verified by the orb. We've also been working on adding other stamps for people that don't have access to the orb yet, where maybe it's not the most secure thing ever. Like, again, one of the things that we support is phone number, and people can register multiple phone numbers. But the idea here is that if we have this passport full of identity signals to prove, for example, that someone is human, you have different levels of how hard it is to get those stamps. And for people that cannot access the orb, it is better, like having a unique phone number still means something. Because it means that if you want to, I don't know, like attack a system, now you need 1,000 phone numbers or maybe millions instead of nothing. So the end goal is the goal, but as we're building this protocol, we want to make it so that us or anyone can add more stamps to this protocol to add more indications of whether a person might be human or not. And our goals for this system was to make it privacy first, maybe even anonymous, to make it decentralized using the tools that crypto give us, and to make it open source. Because it feels like those are the requirements that, like, if I was working on a project, I would be comfortable with adding something like this. And yeah, we built this system called World ID. The system is very complex behind the scenes. It uses zero-knowledge cryptography. It does all the machine learning stuff from the orb. But we worked really hard to simplify it so that when you are working on it, there's just two things that you need to worry about. And those two things are signing with Worldcoin and anonymous actions. Signing with Worldcoin is intended for Web 2 applications, for the original applications, to use as a signing with Google replacement or any other sign-ins, and makes it so that they can make sure the users are unique humans and also have a unique account without actually learning any information with them. So as an example, this is the OpenAI. This is our version of the OpenAI ChatGPT sign-in page. They haven't integrated that at least yet. And the idea would be, similar to how they have Continue with Google, Continue with Microsoft, they could continue with Worldcoin. That brings them to this page where they just scan the QR code with their phone. And then when they click Approve Sign-in, they're signed in a completely anonymous way, and the application only gets a random ID. And then for anonymous actions, we build something that works across every single type of decentralized application and that gets validated on-chain, making it so that you can have anonymous actions that cannot be tied to each other. So an example here would be if you're building something like Snapshot or a voting platform, you will be able to have a unique action for each governance proposal, making it so that like you can still on each proposal make sure that people are only voting once and they're not like attacking the vote somehow, but at the same time not being able to trace people between votes. So you get anonymous vote here, anonymous vote here on different proposals, and you have no way of telling if these votes are from the same person or not. But when someone tries to vote twice on the same proposal, that's when you can identify them. So in a way, it's a fully anonymous CAPTCHA-like system that lets you tell not only if someone is human, but also have they done this specific action before, which makes it really, really powerful. And the best thing about it is that it is really, really, really easy to integrate, both on and off chain. So hopefully I think I may have to really quickly turn the display because we didn't rehearse this before, so that it mirrors. There we go. So I'm going to show a bunch of examples about this and maybe a little code. Hopefully this is big enough so that everyone can see it. If not, you can let me know and I'll make everything bigger. The first one is the demo that I explained about ChatGPT. Obviously, like, this is not actual ChatGPT, this is a demo that we made, but we basically rebuilt it to show how the experience should be. So you go to the page, you click login, you get taken to Auth0. Now this is really cool. Auth0 is a platform that lets people set up authentication without actually writing any code. So this means that even if you are not technical and don't know how to code, you can still take advantage of Worldcoin by just going in here, clicking a bunch on the Auth0 dashboard, clicking a bunch of buttons, and now you have signing with Worldcoin in your site. So obviously, for this hackathon, we care about slightly more technical things, on-chain stuff, but you can also use it without any knowledge of code. So as I said before, I get a QR code, and then I just need to go to the World app on my phone, scan the QR code with my phone, and then it would show do you want to verify signing with Worldcoin here. After I confirm, it takes me home. And in this case, we just made an example of a hypothetical human mode that would be enabled if you sign in with Worldcoin. Another example of this, slightly more complex, is we go to the World ID Pet Orbs page, which is a little page that we made so that people would be able to adopt for little cats orbs. So this is a page that allows people to mint an NFT, and then we give them the physical thing. And implementing this in page is very, very simple. We have this package called ID Kit that has a World ID widget React component. And in here, you would just pass a bunch of settings like an app ID, action, all of these things. You can get all of these from our developer portal. And I will later share a link to the documentation where all of this is explained, including starter kits and all of that. But the idea here is you just like initialize this widget with a bunch of parameters. Then on success, you get the proof, you save it, and then when it's time to actually do something like this, like in this case, actually mint the NFT, when you're calling the smart contract, in this case, I am calling it here because it allows people, the way that we build this app specifically, it allows other people to pay for gas instead of the user. But basically in here, when I'm calling the contract, aside from the address of the user and the name that they have chosen for their little mascot, it also passes the 3 parameters of the proof in order for the contract to verify them. Now, if I go to the contract, which is over here, this is a fork for starter kit. So again, most of the coding here you'll see commented out and explained somewhere else. But there's this adopt function that, as we saw before, receives an address, the name, and then a bunch of parameters. And the code here basically is just going to check this nullifier hash, in a way, is unique for this action, but for the same user, it's always going to be the same number. So the check is very simple. We first check, has this user already done this? If it is, we stop the execution. After, we call the wallet contract and tell it, please verify that this proof actually is valid, that the user is human. And then when that succeeds, we just like mark it as this user has already done that. And then afterwards is our custom code for minting the NFT or whatever it is. Like I mentioned before, if you go to our documentation or our GitHub page, you will find enough Farhad starter, Foundry starter for the smart contracts, and then also an off-chain, I think it's called off-chain. Anyways, the links are in the Notion that I will give in a second. An off-chain starter kit for people that want to validate the proof without a smart contract through our API, which is the exact same flow, but instead of calling the smart contract, you call an API, or on-chain. And so let me go back to the slides. There we go. And so obviously this has a lot of use cases. You can imagine, for example, airdrops, which is why we initially built it, but also governance, voting. Like Vitalik has been shouting at everyone, like, stop doing the coin voting. That doesn't really work. But no one really listens, and that's mostly because we had no way of actually on-chain telling users that they were human before. Now we do. There's also a big decentralized social media movement lately for Lens, for example, that tries to figure out the next generation of social media. And algorithms are very vulnerable to manipulation, and especially if you have instead of accounts and captchas, smart contracts that everyone, including bots, can call. So incorporating some incentive layer for verifying that you're a human also works. And there's a lot more stuff that you can play with. Basically, our reason for us being here is for you guys to get inspired and then see what you guys can do. If you want to see more concrete examples, on our documentation, we have a use cases page that goes more into detail on things that you may want to build with this, what is possible, etc. And we also have 20K in prices for a bunch of categories. These will all be in the ETHGlobal page and on the intro keynote in a few hours, so I'm not going to go over them right now, but basically, you can play around with it and probably make something cool. We have this SDK, as I mentioned before, the developer portal, and this is the QR code that gives you access to it. We are in early stage rolling this out. Basically, this lets you skip the waitlist. If you don't manage to actually capture this right now, don't worry, come to our booth downstairs. We still give you a QR code. We have like the little stacks of paper that have a bunch of QR codes that you all will need. Gonna give you like 5 seconds to take the picture, but again, if you miss it, it's fine. And yeah, as I mentioned before, we have made this page, worldcoin.org/Lisbon23, which is an ocean page full of resources. It outlines the prices, the QR code that I just showed, the documentation, all the starter kits, a bunch of ideas. Basically, everything that you will need, this is the one that you need. I probably should have a QR code to this as well, but it's a pretty easy to remember URL. And as I mentioned before, downstairs our booth, we have a big stack of papers with a bunch of QR codes, and this is one of them. So to summarize a little bit, we are building WalletD, which is a global entity protocol. It's fully open source, it's private, it's decentralized, and it lets you check if people are unique humans. Right now, it uses these signals of orb and phone, but we want to continue exploring also what other things people might add in the future. Maybe at some point, instead of just being able to know whether someone is a human or not, you can also use as proofs to prove other identity attributes. We're, again, still exploring, and we hope that you guys explore as well. That's it. I think I have some time, so if anyone has any questions, now's the time. Yes?
And both of within back home.
Right. So the question is, if the wallet gets tied to a wallet, and the answer is it doesn't. Basically, the way that wallet works behind the scenes, it's a separate private key that your phone generates, and the reason why it's separate from your wallet is because you want to be able to use this from any wallet at all. Thanks to it being anonymous, that means that if you have multiple wallets or even multiple entities, if you have an anon on Twitter, you would be able to use your wallet ID for some things that they want to do, like maybe volume proposals, and then for some other things from your entity without being able to dox yourself. So again, the way that it works is it's a separate key. You use that to generate zero-knowledge proofs. That is already handled for you from the app and integrated with IDKit, but it is not tied to any wallet, and that makes it so that you can use it with any wallet. Yes. Right. The stamps, as of right now, are meant as one-time stamps. We may at some point, as we are getting more data, and as I mentioned, the part of the iris scanning process involves machine learning. So as those algorithms improve, we may be able to improve their accuracy and maybe reissue the stamp or like have a new one. We're still figuring that out. The protocol is made so that stamps are a one-time thing, but you could issue multiple ones in the future. The way that the orb works, basically you need to go to the orb once, and then once you have the key validated on your phone, you don't need to go again. But in the future, as new stamps get added, or as some stamps improve accuracy, if it's meaningful, you could think that they maybe make like a B2 stamp or something of the sort. Yes? Right, so the way that it works is, first of all, Orb takes a picture of you and combines that with the public key that your phone generated that is shown through the Orb as a QR code. You have an option to explicitly opt in to let us collect data, like the photos, in order to improve the algorithms, but by default, that is not the case. So in the case where you don't consent to that, the images get deleted immediately after they get converted into the iris code, and they would never leave the orb. For the case where you do consent, they get encrypted and stored in a cloud so that we can use them for training. And then the iris code and the public key go on-chain to a smart contract, and then they are stored also as a mapping, because at some point we want to enable the idea of you being able to go back to an orb and kind of like invalidate the old entity and issue a new one to make sure that like if people lose it, they can still go back and recover it. That is not in place yet, but we still need to like tie the iris code to the public key in order to enable that in the future. The really good news about that is, since the public key is not tied to any of the usage, and also the iris code there's not a way to recover that into like knowing who you are without you getting scanned again, it's still fully private, even though we are storing those two pieces of information. Yes. So can you speak louder? Yes, as I mentioned, that is the QR code that lets you skip the waitlist. If you scan this one, you get like an invite that lets you skip it. Again, if you don't capture this, we'll be downstairs. You'll be able to get the link there. The waitlist is mostly as a way for us to work closely with developers and make sure that like we can give them all the attention that they need, that we don't have like 1,000 people suddenly trying this, or like thousands of people, and we are just like being flooded with ideas on how to improve it. But the protocol is ready. It's just a way to make sure that the developer experience is very good by working closely with the developers that we are letting access to and participating in hackathons like this. So again, this lets you skip it. It's below. I think it's all. Oh, as something that I want to mention before we all go is, in previous hackathons, we've had this thing where people will actually go through the flow, do almost everything right. Like let's say that they integrate the ETHKit widget, which is the preferred way to do this. They would integrate the widget, they would set everything up, they will then get the proof, and they will not validate it. And this is not great, because it means that anyone with some basic knowledge of like hacking or doing bad stuff can just give you an invalid proof, and if you never check it, then the whole purpose of this is gone. Same thing for if you actually check it, but you check it on your client, on the front end. Then someone can just like intercept that request and change it. So unfortunately, if you do that, we will not be able to give you the prize, even if you really want to, and you've built something really, really cool. So I feel like I'm saying this at every single conference, and someone still forgets, so I'm going to be saying it again. Once you get the proof, even if you do it through the API, if you do it on-chain, make sure that that proof that you get, you send it either to your backend or to a smart contract and actually validate it there. Otherwise, this whole thing has a nice UI, but doesn't really serve any purpose, so please remember to do that. And let's see if this hackathon, we can get no one making this mistake. Yes?
So it's like iterating that.
Sorry?
All they got. The core Polygon scan has to drop into called a beta or
Not exactly. Yes and no. These are two separate things. We have the wallet app, which is like the wallet that we give people. That is the application through which you use Wallet ID, but at the same time, it also creates a wallet for you. So the wallet is separate to Wallet ID. This is intended because the way that we are onboarding people with Worldcoin is we are all over the world, going to every single city that we can think of, having booths there in like the streets, in shopping centers, whatever, and actually talking to people, explain to them how crypto works, what Worldcoin is, what Ethereum is, what stablecoins are, all of those things. And so for those people that are getting onboarded to crypto for the first time and don't have a wallet, we also give them a wallet. So when you actually download the Worldcoin app, you will get a wallet. Now that wallet is separate from Wallet ID, and for example, I already have my wallet that I've been using for years, and so when I'm using Wallet ID, what I do is I connect, when the application tells me to connect, I wallet connect with like maybe my existing wallet, and then I just use the wallet app for Wallet ID. So these are separate things. As of right now, yes, the wallets that we create when users create the app are Gnosis safe wallets on Polygon. That will be optimism soon, but that is unrelated to Wallet ID. I think we're out of time, so thank you all for listening. And if you have any other questions, I'm pretty easy to find. I'll probably be around the booth downstairs. It's very close to the entrance. And yeah, come find me. Good luck building with YD, and I'm sure you'll make some really cool things.